it's Wendy. Welcome to my channel, Show Me Mo Vegan, where I make easy, whole food vegan meals. Today, I'm talking about how to batch prep a couple of different items so that you're always prepared and always have healthy foods on hand. We're gonna be making some whole grains as well as some sweet potatoes. And then at the end, we're gonna take those batch cooked ingredients and create a recipe out of it. We're gonna make some curry chickpea patties. Now, full disclosure, I've never made this recipe before. This is how most of my food is made. I just throw some things together and hope it turns out okay. And not to toot my own horn, but it usually does turn out pretty well. And if you've been eating this way for a while, you'll understand what I mean. But if you're new to whole food vegan eating, just know that once your taste buds have adjusted, you'll be able to taste all of the nuanced flavors of natural foods, and really anything can go with anything. So as long as you know some spices that you like, you can throw any veggies, whole grains, and beans together, and you'll usually be able to come up with something pretty good. So we'll find out together at the end of the video if these are any good. We're gonna start with our batch cooking though. So first things first, we're going to make a mixture of whole grains. I like to make a mixture of grains because I think the more diversity of plants in your diet, the better. I know a lot of people will just batch prep like rice, for example, and then eat it all week. But I also like to do this mixture of grains, so it's just a little more interesting than plain rice. So today I'm actually going to be mixing rice and sorghum. I'm using a short grain brown rice, which I'm sure you're familiar with brown rice. And then sorghum is my other grain, which you may not be as familiar with. So here you can see the difference. This is the sorghum here. It's a little more round than the brown rice. I'm using a 6-quart Instant Pot, and I have 1 cup of the short grain brown rice and 1 cup of the sorghum, which I've already rinsed. Then I'm adding 5 cups of water. Whenever you're cooking multiple grains together, just make sure you're picking grains that have a similar cook time. For the rice and sorghum, I'm gonna do 27 minutes at high pressure. If you're unfamiliar with using an Instant Pot, make sure your valve is in the sealing position, and then it will take about 10 to 15 minutes to come up to pressure before it cooks for the time that you set. And for this, I'll usually let it natural release for at least 10 to 15 minutes, and then if there's any remaining pressure, I'll go ahead and quick release that. Next up, we're gonna batch cook some sweet potatoes in our Instant Pot. This time I'm using my 3-quart Instant Pot, and that's just because I only have 1 6-quart and 1 3-quart, but you could definitely use a 6 or even an 8-quart to do your sweet potatoes, and you can batch cook even more at once. So for the sweet potatoes, we're gonna use the trivet that came with the Instant Pot. You'll wanna add about 1 cup of water, and the water is what allows the pressure to build so that your potatoes will cook. And then I take a fork and I poke the potato just a few times to let the steam release. Now, I've heard some people say you don't have to do this when you cook your potatoes in the Instant Pot, but it takes 5 seconds, and so I just do it just in case. And then we'll take our potatoes and simply layer them in however they fit. And then again, we'll put the lid on and make sure our valve is set to the sealing position. Now, when you're cooking sweet potatoes, the time will depend on how large the potatoes are. These are pretty small, so I think I'll do 15 minutes at high pressure and then let it natural release for about 10 minutes and release any remaining pressure. All right, so my sweet potatoes and my mixture of rice and sorghum are done cooking. When you're done cooking the grains, there will be a little extra liquid, so I just drained that off before putting it in my storage container. So then what I'll do is I'll let these cool and store them in the fridge. These are great to use throughout the week, either as a snack or as a base to a meal. I always include whole grains with every meal, so having them batch cooked like this is really helpful. You can just scoop out a portion and eat it with whatever soup, stew, stir fry, or even salad that you're eating. Same goes for the potatoes. You can add them to anything, really. One thing I did want to mention about the potatoes is I'm planning to use them as a mash, so I overcooked these a little bit. If you were wanting to use them for something else, you might cook them for a shorter time in the Instant Pot. Some people like to pre-cook them just a little bit in the Instant Pot, and then they use them later in the week to make French fries. That way you can chop them up into wedges and either air fry or bake them, and it goes a lot quicker. All right, so now it's time to make our curry chickpea patties. Now, this is a little more complicated recipe than I normally would do, but it's so much easier when you've already batch cooked these ingredients. So this isn't something that I would do all at once like we're doing here today, by first batch cooking the grains and the sweet potatoes and then making these patties. Instead, this would be something that I would just throw together during the week with the stuff I had already batch cooked. So it makes these slightly more complicated recipes a lot easier. All right, so here are all of our ingredients. I'm gonna start with the chickpeas. This is 1.5 cups of cooked chickpeas, so it's about the equivalent of a can of chickpeas. You could definitely use that as well. And then I'm using a potato masher just to break them up just a little bit. You don't want to completely mash the chickpeas. You just want to break them up a little bit so that you have a little different texture. So you'll have some big pieces and some more mashed pieces. Next, I'm going to add 1 cup of the sweet potato that we pre-cooked. And I'll mash that a little bit as well. Then I'm going to take 1 cup of our cooked whole grain. And now I'll add in our spices. I'll put all the measurements down in the description box below, but right here I have 1/2 teaspoon each of garlic and onion powder, 1 teaspoon of curry powder, and about 1/4 teaspoon of black pepper. And then I'm going to add some rolled oats. I'm going to start with about 1/2 cup. I'll tell you what I end up using in the description box below. And I'm also going to add a little bit of flaxseed. This will help bind it together a little bit. I'm going to do 2 tablespoons. And then I'll start mixing. I think I'm just going to add maybe 1/4 cup more oats. And then I think that'll be good. This smells really good. So usually when you're making a bean and grain patty like this, they should hold together pretty well. But if you let the mixture sit for a little bit, it'll help even more. So if you wanted to take the time, you could put this in the refrigerator for maybe 30 minutes to let it set up. But I'm not patient enough for that. And if my patties fall apart a little bit, I don't really care because it's all going to the same place and it's all gonna taste delicious either way. So that's what our mixture looks like. And we're gonna go ahead and form that into patties and bake it. So there's really no way around this. You're gonna have to get your hands a little dirty. That's the best way to make patties. And I got this little trick from Rachel Ray, actually. She always scores the mixture in however many patties you wanna make. I'm gonna make 8 patties because I like smaller patties, but you could make them larger if you want. So now we know about how big each one will be. And we can just take the mixture and form it into a little patty. And this is a pretty sticky mixture, so your hands are gonna get nice and messy. But that's okay. It's more fun that way. All right, so here are our patties. I'm gonna bake these in a 400-degree Fahrenheit oven. I'm gonna start with about 15 to 20 minutes on the first side, and then I'll take them out, see where they're at, and if they're ready to be flipped, I will flip them and then bake another probably 15 to 20 minutes. I'll let you know at the end the total time. All right, my patties are out of the oven now, so let's take a look. So they smell delicious and they hold together pretty well. I ended up baking them about 20 minutes on the first side and 15 minutes on the second side. And they look really nice. So one side got nice and crispy and the other side not so much, but you can cook it however much you want. So I'll just make myself a plate. I also just steamed some purple kale. I guess technically it's actually called red kale, even though it's purple. It's kind of like purple cabbage is actually red cabbage. I never understood that. And I'm just gonna put a little balsamic vinegar on the kale. And then I think I'll also eat an apple. That will be my simple little meal. All right, and then now moment of truth, the taste test. It looks really nice on the inside. You could see there's a little piece of chickpea, there's a little chunks of sweet potato. You know what? That was not bad. Now these are SOS free, so there's no salt, oil, or sugar in these. If you wanted to, if you do eat salt, you could add a little salt to these, but I think this is good just like this. Of course, you could eat these on a bun if you wanted to. It's difficult to find a good bun that doesn't have a lot of added stuff in it. Sometimes I'll just use something like Ezekiel bread, which is pretty clean. And I also love just using pita pockets. I found these pita pockets from a place online called Shiloh Farms, and these are just whole wheat flour, water, yeast, and they do have salt. So if you are completely SOS free, these might not work, but I just like eating them by themselves too. You can also add condiments if you want. You know what would be really good with this would be to make a vegan mayo with silken tofu, Dijon mustard. That would make a really good topping for this. So I'm gonna go ahead and go eat this now. Let me know if you liked this video. Let me know if you have other ideas for things you'd like to see me try to make. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.